Hello, we're back together for another Talk of the Trinity.
Hello, we are back together for another Talk of the Trinity.
And this week, there's a lot of Villa news to get through. We've had pre-season friendlies.
So much Villa news to get through this week. Pre-season friendlies.
We've got the issues, or is it issues, with the new captain being selected.
Yeah, new captain. I think we've got potentially a few issues there.
Oh, literally everything I'm saying you're repeating.
Yeah, because, Gerard said that 2 vice-captains we need this year. So I thought, we'd double up, get that double message across. And also, we've got a lot of other big news this week. So.
Oh, we got Danny Ings is coming on!
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Talk of the Trinity podcast. I am Baz Barrett. With me, quite literally, is Mr. Trinity himself, Will Forrest. Because as we alluded to in the intro, we've got some big news this week to get through, so need to be together to really discuss it, get in depth. And speaking of getting in depth with all Villa news, you can keep up to date with all of what's going on our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, whereby we're keeping you up with the latest transfer. Very good.
Thanks.
Latest transfer news, pre-season news, formation news, also a pod or two, no doubt.
I think there's been about 15 this week.
So you've had a slow week on the polls, but there's always one there. Or you can check us out on our YouTube channel, Talk of the Trinity, whereby all our previous episodes are uploaded for your viewing and listening pleasure. But if you just want the viewing pleasure, YouTube's the place to go. If you just want the audio pleasure, then that's our audio providers, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google, maybe some other ones we signed up for. And if you haven't checked out one of our episodes recently, then we'll direct you to the one we did about a week or so ago with Mr. Aston Villa himself, Connor Sherry.
A lot of views on YouTube with that one. We've had over 200 views altogether, I think.
Yeah, I think that's I think it's our record viewing audience, which it's not quite the 10 million or so or more who'll be watching the Women's Euro final later on today of data recording.
Yeah.
Good luck to them. But we really appreciate everybody who's listened and watched and engaged with that one. I mean, we'll admit you probably were only there to listen and watch Connor. But I hope you enjoyed kind of our input into that episode anyway. And we got plenty of previous guest stars that you can check out, which we did over the course of last season. Had Andy Gray. We had some fans from other...
But not Andy Gray himself. Jamie.
We had to... That was the first... If you want to see whether I made the same mistake opening up that podcast, then check that out. We've had guests from other teams on, Brighton, Everton, Watford. I mean, sadly, great episode that, but they're in the Championship now, so we probably won't have them back unless we get them in the Cup.
That was one of our most popular away day episodes. I was nowhere near that episode, which is probably why it was so popular, to be fair.
It was a good chat, and for Watford, it was one of their most popular away days.
And he was from Birmingham, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and then we lost to them 1-0.
Yeah, that wasn't a good day. But if you've got no idea what we're talking about, go back in the archives, go and check it out. But enough of talking about things that happened last season. We're now going to be moving on to things that have happened in the last week, 2 weeks. So we're getting closer to the future, because since our last episode on air, we've played Man United in pre-season. We've played Rennes in pre-season. Fulham behind closed doors. I think there's talk that we're playing Liverpool behind closed doors.
Yeah, we did. Didn't we do that last year as well? The day after the first game of the season, or a couple of years ago, and Traore scored, and we got smashed by him at Anfield.
Yeah, I remember was it last season where there was this weird moment because of COVID and nobody really been allowed in the grounds for pre-season games. You found out about the score about 2 days later. in terms of they weren't like played live, or was that the season before? Have I just
the
gone?
season before that was, we beat Man United in pre-season. Watkins scored after 3 minutes, diving header, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, and it's like, well, COVID's been going on so long. Just all the last couple of years just all merge into one terrible mess. But what isn't a terrible mess is what we're going to be talking about now, because pre-season undefeated in the what's the opposite of closed door, open door, open door friendlies, but. Played Man United, played Ren, and could go on about the individual games because you had some moments, good comeback, good win. But as I've mentioned, it's the end of our open pre-season, and I think it's becoming a bit clearer, potentially, in some areas as to who's going to be playing, who's not going to be playing. I still think there's quite a lot of things that are up in the air in terms of the Bournemouth game next week, who's going to be the starting lineup. For you, Will, in terms of what you saw in the Man United game and the Rennes game, were there any signs that some questions are closer to be answered, or did it just confuse you even more in terms of what our likely team formation is going to be for the Premier League?
I think there's some questions that have been answered, and they're the obvious ones, really. We know that we've had it answered for us about the captaincy already.
Yep. We'll be coming on to that a bit later.
We know that Luca Dean and Matty Cash are going to be our first choice fullbacks, and they are going to be encouraged to push as far forward as they can and try and get into those double figures, really, 4 assists this year. Diego Carlos is our number 1 centre-back.
Yep, looks good.
Yeah, Boubacar Kamara, he's looking decent so far. Yep. Bit of a wobble a couple of times yesterday from what I understand. But he's that defensive midfielder we've been crying out for. Coutinho seems to be a shoo-in for starting in the starting 11. Watkins seems to be more of the first choice as well from what we're seeing, and also Douglas Luiz is an 8. But there's definitely a few questions still, and I'd pose these to you in regards to what formation are we going to play? Is it going to be that 4-3-3? Who's going to partner Carlos? Can we read too much into yesterday's partnership in defence? I know myself, Liam, you, the rest of us who are on that WhatsApp group had our thoughts and opinions over maybe why James and Mings weren't there. And also, has Leon Bailey walked into the team?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of end of last season, talked about it quite a bit in terms of trying to get Watkins and Ings in the same team, 2 up front. I'd say in terms of what we've seen for pre-season, I don't think either of them could complain if they weren't in the starting lineup against Bournemouth on Saturday. I don't think in terms of those two, they haven't done terrible, but I don't think from what I've seen, either of them have really, grabbed the shirt and, as we mentioned in the intro, Ings has grabbed himself the number 9 shirt. But
guess what I'm getting for my birthday?
Yeah, but there was the dilemma of the Smith era going into the Gerrard era. How do you fit 2 of them in the team together? And I think from what we've seen of pre-season, I think the answer is you don't really. I'd say in terms of answer to your question, do we play 4-3-3? Yes, I think we do based on what we've seen. And does Bailey walk in or pelt 50 miles an hour into the team based on pre-season? Yeah, and I think in terms of, we talked about Bailey at one of our closing podcasts during the summer in terms of would he still be there at the start of this season, and we were both of the view that if he can stay fit, he'd be a real asset to this team, and that's been something pre-season. I'd say in terms of he's the big winner for Villa in pre-season, and we've had that glimpse of what we thought we were getting when we signed him last summer and just couldn't stay fit. He is first choice, I think you have to say, in terms of this pre-season. I think he offers something different in terms of pace and just general directness in terms of going forward. So I'd say in terms of the question last season was how do you incorporate Ings and Watkins into the same team? Now I think based on his pre-season, it's how do you incorporate Bailey into the team, and it's you play 3 up front, or that 4-3-3 formation. And I think if it was me, based on what we've seen this season, that is how I'd play. And then you'd look in terms of who's having that number 9. Is it Ings because he's literally got number 9, or is it Watkins, or Potentially. And I don't think this is going to happen based on what we've seen and what you outlined in terms of pre-season. But I would be tempted to have a think about it. I think it's a season or half a season too early. Bay on the right, Watkins on the left, Archer up front. I think we're a little early for that. But in terms of Ings and Watkins, I said I don't think either of them have done enough. I don't think you can write them off. I'd say in terms of if we brought another centre forward before transfer deadline day, I don't think either of them could go and storm the manager's office and go, what are you doing? You know, I've done my best. If we did sign another centre forward, Arch goes out on loan to the Championship for a season, comes back next season, I think he'd be first choice. Provided he does as well in the Championship as we expect he would do based on Preston last season. He scores 25 goals in the Championship. I mean, the last striker we had who scored 25 goals in the Championship is currently lining up in Serie A.
Yeah, very, very good striker. And it's a shame that we could never actually get him into the team. I know he came to watch us when we played Walsall because his younger brother's just been signed by Walsall on a 1-year deal. See, for me, and I get what you're saying, neither of them have really set the ground alight. You know, with Watkins though has seemed to miss a lot of easy chances and has seemed to fluff his lines a bit. But the old adage is, at least he's getting into those chances, he's getting the opportunities. So I'm not 100% Danny Ings.
But 110% a minimum at least.
But Ings has scored goals. He scored the penalty against Leeds. Okay, it's a penalty, but he still had to stick it in the back of the net. Coutinho couldn't. And he scored in the friendly against Fulham, the 1-0 win there, unless you believe it was a 4-2 defeat, as apparently other rumours have gone out. But he's the type, he's hit the post as well in one of our matches against Brisbane Roar. And he's the type of person who, when watching that first half against Brisbane Roar, he was making intelligent runs into the box. But unlike Watkins, where Watkins really pushes onto the goalkeeper or sniffs around the 6-yard box, Ings stops, he drops back to about the penalty spot or 12 yards out, waiting for that cut back. The people who were on the pitch with him hadn't really figured that out at the time. So he creates chances that way. I mean, speaking about that three up front that you've mentioned, and as mouth-watering as that prospect is, I wonder whether at the moment you could go with that, but Ings up front instead of Archer, and have Ings as a bit more of, and I've said it before, and I don't think they're the same level at all, but he's that type of striker, Harry Kane sort of role in regards to, he'll get chances in the box, but he'll also drop deeper, and he'll try and play the ball through. We saw last year, he got a hell of a lot of assists.
Yeah, he's got good eye, good pass.
But would Watkins want to play out on the left? And if that happened, you've then got Philippe Coutinho playing centre mid. He has played centre mid over the summer. He's played centre mid previously for Barcelona as well. So could you have then a Kamara, Coutinho, for you will say McGinn,
I think
Bailey, Watkins,
yeah,
Ings.
I mean, in terms of McGinn, I think we're talking about the captaincy a bit later on, so we'll go on to McGinn in more detail, no doubt, in terms of that. But I'd say for this current purpose, he's captain, he's got to play. I mean, we'll go on a bit later whether he perhaps should be in the team, but I'd say in terms of...
But what about that as a midfield three with those three up front? Could that work? And then you're allowing Ings to drop deeper and Bailey and Watkins to cut inside a lot more, and it sort of becomes that 4-3-1-2 again. But it gives you probably more goal-scoring opportunities because your wingers are really tucking in, and we know that Gerrard likes his wingers to tuck in from his time at Rangers. It seems that he's reverted back to the three up front, which he imposed at Rangers initially. There's talks that it was a Michael Beale suggestion to go with 2 10s has worked at times for the Villa, not enough at the time. Notably, the times it has worked is Everton away when we beat them 1-0, and for that little bit against Man United as well. But there are a lot of unanswered questions. Be interesting to see who the fans think will start up front out of Watkins, Ings and Archer. On the poll, which I did, where it was just those three as options, Danny Ings won it.
Yep.
Thank you. I've got 64 million different Twitter accounts.
Yeah, bribes will be paid during the next couple of weeks.
So I'd like to give a shout out to Andrew, Albert, Adam, John, Murray, Mike. But when I was doing the starting lineup, Ollie Watkins was in the lead of that one at last time I checked in. So I think people still aren't really sure. Maybe they're going for Watkins because he started yesterday and played longer. But remembering, Watkins played for 70 odd minutes yesterday. Ings played for 20 minutes, but he played most of, if not all of, I don't know how long he played, against Fulham and also back to goal. So maybe there's a little bit of deflection there from Gerrard. He's put certain people into the Fulham game to get their fitness up to 90 so that they will start against Bournemouth. And I think that could be the case with the centre-back that we see alongside Diego Carlos.
Yep. Which again, I think we'll have a lively debate about that one in respect to when we're talking about the captaincy issue. But I think in terms of the fans' votes on Watkins and things, just demonstrate that it's still up in the air. No, we don't know. I mean, in terms of
It is.
You mentioned in terms of a team there. You mentioned Coutinho, player who we didn't mention, who quite a lot of fans I've seen in terms of on Twitter, social media, thinking and saying in terms of if you were going purely on the pre-season performance, Buendia potentially ahead of Coutinho in terms of what's been seen on the pitch. I mean, I think in terms of if we were in charge as opposed to what we think Gerrard's going to do. And I think that is an example of where there's potentially going to be two different views, because I think I'd say personally, I think Gerrard will play Coutinho.
Yeah.
What I would say in terms of what I've seen in pre-season, maybe that three up front, jumbling the dice again. You have Buendia on one side, Bay on the other, and then whoever out the hat we draw to play centre forward, play centre forward. I mean, I don't think that's a bad idea.
Could you put Coutinho or Buendia though into that centre midfield role? Because when you've got three centre midfielders, the one thing that was mentioned a lot last year was that McGinn and Ramsey got overran because they were both eights. And they both wanted to get on the ball and drive forward with it. Though I'd argue that one drove forward. I think Ramsey drives forward a bit more than McGinn.
Yeah.
We've seen that against Tottenham, against Norwich. McGinn's more of I'll hustle and bustle, and when I get an opportunity around the edge of the box, I'll wind up and let rip, like a McDonald's toy. Best analogy.
Yep.
Good one.
I've ever heard. Coming to McDonald's meal deals near you, a windy up McGinn.
But they're too similar. They're too similar in the fact they both want to be eights. You need a 6, Kamara. You need an 8, McGinn, at the moment with the captaincy. You probably need someone else who's a bit more of a maverick, who will get back into shape, but can float around and maybe hang that little bit further forward because your 8's going to get back. Could you have Buendia or Coutinho as that central midfielder, maybe even swapping as the game goes on, and allowing them to drift and get into the pocket of space that will be behind Ings or Watkins?
I'd say in terms of the centre midfield out of Buendia and Coutinho, I'd be more comfortable if it was Buendia.
Yeah.
Just because I think he's got more of a tackle on him, more of a bite on him, shall we say. We've seen that a few times. But it does show in terms of kind of the central wide areas of the field, we do have options.
We do.
Which is positive in a way. It's always better to have more than one combination, possibly, than, which has been a bit of the problem with Villa, especially during the course of last season. On occasion, it's like, well, we've got no one else to play there, so they're playing, you know, regardless of form. And we talked about it with McGinn, we talked about it maybe with Ramsey, perhaps dropping off a little in the second half of the season. There were quite a few players you could put into that bracket, so having those options is good. And
the 4-2-3-1 as well I think is going to be an option that comes into play a bit next season.
Yeah, I think certain games, especially away, I can see us playing that. And one player who we kind of discounted, really, I'd say at the start of pre-season, not because of ability, but just because before, well, you don't want to be here, we'll take the money. Because, we've been told there's a line of suitors.
There's one of two people here now. It could be. I think I know who you believe.
Ready for him, but potentially he's going to be in the starting lineup. He's probably saying more than a 50% chance at time recording. Dougie Luiz.
Dougie Luiz, yeah. Positive contract conversations as well over the last couple of days in the hope that he will be sticking around. He's the type of player who is starting to flourish a bit more, especially more so in that number 8 role that he's playing. And we've seen him chip in, for goal against Southampton from that position. He can get on the ball more, he can create more. Dougie Luiz, for him, unfortunately, is the type of central midfielder who you can put anywhere, attack, defensive or centre,
Yep.
though he is definitely best as a centre. And I think that if you have him as one of the 3, with Kamara as well, you don't have to worry about who that other one is, because Luiz will be your archetypical central midfielder, your Gareth Barry, if you like. I can play here and I can do it all. I'm going to stay central. I'm going to stay centre mid. That's my position. I'm not an attacking centre mid. I'm not a defensive centre mid. I'm a centre mid. John McGinn then, or Ramsey, can be the one to push forward a bit. They rotate. And then, of course, you've got the other person who you could have been talking about, Morgan Sanson, who could be just another centre mid, because he's not going to get forward or get back as much.
No, in terms of Sanson and pre-season, but based on what you've seen, does he look like he's in Gerrard's plans for troubling that first 11?
He's in the plans, and I think a lot of it's going to boil down to how he does when he gets the opportunities to get onto the pitch. Though it does seem at times that one of Gerrard's weaknesses, oh God, I can't believe I'm saying that about him.
We'll scrub that out the edit.
But one of his things is that he has certain players who he always picks. He's got his favourites. It could potentially appear to the outside. Your McGinns, your Watkins, your Cashies, your Dins,
Yep.
and whatnot. But especially with Sanson, he played a storming game against Man United at home. He did make one mistake with the underhit pass.
Yep.
A lot of other players made mistakes that game. He got hooked. It was the proper curtain call,
it was
sheep's crook.
Yeah, there was no subtlety about that.
No, and then we've not really seen him since, and I think it's a shame because he is a good player. He's a player who wants to excel at the Villa as well. Could be a very big season for him, and if we sell Luiz, if he doesn't want to commit to a contract, does Sanson deserve a chance up until January?
So I think everybody deserves a chance if you're in the first team squad. I mean, I think the problem with Sanson is in terms of does he deserve to be in a starting 11? The short answer is I got no idea because we haven't seen him enough, because he hasn't been given those opportunities. And is it because of what's been seen on the training field? Is it because, as you mentioned, maybe Gerrard has his preferred players who are going to play no matter what? And I think the Luiz situation is added another dynamic. A 2+2 scenario, which you could get 4, you could get 24, is last time I checked my girlfriend's Insta, Luiz is going out with Alicia Lehmann, the Aston Villa women's player, who recently signed a new one-year deal. We don't like to think of footballers as humans with emotions and all that type of stuff. Just play football. But her signing a new one-year deal, is that maybe leading to Luiz not being out the exit door now, or is it a situation whereby they've said she'll be here for 1 more year, I've got 1 more year in my contract, we'll both give our respective 100%, and then we'll both go off in the next summer to Italy or perhaps wherever they both can get a deal? Or is that just wildless? I mean, it is wildless abandon because I've just thought of it on the spot. But I think things like that, they don't get considered in the mix. But obviously Luiz has been in Birmingham for the last few years, so he's settled here. Obviously, Lucia's been here. She's been here for a couple of years, kind of at the end of the contract. Mm-hmm. The lure of Birmingham, perhaps making both of them consider, perhaps maybe that's a factor. Maybe it's got no difference at all. But
I mean, while Snobs and whatnot and Mr. Egg and all those places might be a huge draw for the likes of us and anyone who's around about our age. I'm a lot younger than I look. I'm
a lot older than I look, so we got it combined.
I think really that Dougie Luiz, the 1 year deal, actually spells more of, okay, yeah, well, they'll be gone. if it was a 2-year deal or a 3-year deal that she'd signed, I'd be a lot more comfortable that Dougie Lees was going to stay unless they're planning on having a break-up at the end of the year, which I'm sure nobody plans to break up with someone.
That is efficient. You got it in the diary,
Yeah.
6 months' time. Yeah. Don't buy a Christmas present.
Yeah. I'm going to let you know. You'll find out when everybody else does as to whether I signed a new contract, whether we're staying together.
Yeah.
Deal or no deal.
You have that relationship contract.
Right. Yeah, I think it's one of them. I don't think it offers any sort of hope at all. Or if anything, it's more of it's a 1-year deal.
No.
But you say about emotion and whatnot. What happens if he goes and signs a 3-year deal? She decides, nah, my time's done. Barca are knocking, Or I want to go back. I want to go back to another club that I played for previously. I want to go back down to London. Goes down there. Does that cause problems for him? And then him thinking, actually, I want to be gone. I'm heartbroken.
Yeah, I mean, the point is, I think it does have an impact in decision making, because you look at it in terms of people who don't play football. In terms of professional football, it's not a secret to say me and you are not playing professional football right now. So, it is a shocking revelation, especially for those who are watching the YouTube version for the first time, because you've been there thinking they are in a peak of physical fitness.
Athletes. I'm built like Diego Carlos, mate.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know you're thinking Commonwealth Games going on at time of recording. Surely we should be competing. I'd say there was a swimming event on Saturday night. Go and have a look at some names on there. You might recognise one. That is, if you are committed to finding out that
Michael Phelps.
Not quite Michael Phelps, but yeah,
Gary Barlow.
I mean, to be fair, Gary Barlow in an Olympic swimming pool. I mean, that is something
absolutely fantastic.
I'd pay to see that.
Yeah.
In terms of that, but yeah, if anybody gets that referenced, tweet us on our Twitter page.
Did he swim?
He ran.
I know, but did he swim as well? He was in the big boat, for the shrimp.
He did.
Fallen out and did like a massive swing. Anyway,
he played table tennis. I remember that. That's in that's in Commonwealth Games as well. He did table tennis. But
all the sports are apart from men's football, I think.
Yeah, I don't think men's cricket's in there. Women's T20 in there as well.
Yeah.
But we digress to say Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, absolutely brilliant. Anyway, back to things that are absolutely brilliant. Our discussion about Villa in terms of that midfield, because I think we've gone through a few positions on the team, some players, and there's a couple that we've missed conspicuously because they do link into
They're Camber, Enirogbenham and O'Reilly.
Yeah, in terms of, I'd suspect in a variation of the game, one's staying, one's going out on loan, one's playing for the reserves and kind of got it most of the time.
Probably, actually, yeah. To be fair.
So we'll you can put them in whichever order you want in terms of that, but I think we'd say Kamara first choice in that number 6 role, and I think he does looks like a tiny player.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say. In terms of some other positions on the field, which we alluded to, one is looking fairly certain, one looking not certain, links in to the captaincy and the announcement over the last week that John McGinn is going to be captain for the upcoming season, Emi Martinez vice captain, Ashley Young club captain.
Yeah.
So you would have deduced by that Tyrone Mings is no longer club captain. Gerrard came out and said he had a word with Tyrone before the decision was announced, detailed his reasons, which, to paraphrase, were wanting to concentrate on your playing rather than the additional responsibility as captain, get that up to speed. I think there was a suggestion, reference to a few of the kind of the mistakes which had been made last season, focusing on to iron them out rather than the additional responsibility of being captain, because it is a lot in terms of more off the field. I'm going to say, because I'm going to throw what's perhaps a controversial opinion straight out there. We're not even talking about the individual players. Does it matter? Does it matter who's captain on the field? Does it matter?
From the point of view of a youth football coach,
yep,
it matters massively for me. And the reason for that, and it's no offence to any of the players who may play for us, whose parents watch this or whatnot, they're all fantastic players. They're all of the same sort of ability and level. but there's certain players who will talk more than others and who have a bit of a better understanding of the game than others, and can see the road ahead, if you like. I learned that on my motorway awareness course this morning. You can see the road ahead, and they can see maybe what's going to happen in front of them. And you want somebody who's vocal there and confident and can lift your team and can, when needed, take the game by the scruff of the neck and drive it forward. You want a Steven Gerrard type of player as your captain. He's probably one of the best captains of the Premier League era, if not the best, in my opinion, for having those qualities himself. I think it's just as important at Premier League level and Champions League and internet, professional level, because we want to now get from here to here. And we've got to go through all of this bit as well, but we want to try and get through that as quickly as possible. You need someone who can drive you forward, who can talk, who won't moan as much, but will tell you when you've done something that's a bit daft, but also pick you up when they need to. And you want someone who's a driving force that will lead by example as well. John McGinn's a very good choice for that. We'll move away from his record as captain so far.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it can only get better. It's like, I hope it can only get better.
I hope so. Don't want another season like that one a few years ago, do we? Decent choice for captain, but I think everything that was mentioned there as well, controversially speaking, Tyrone Mings had. The leader. He spoke, he was positive. You've got to be a good role model off the pitch as well. You've got to be a big personality that can join the team together. And we've seen that Tyrone Mings is a fantastic role model off the pitch with a lot of the stuff he's done.
Yep.
He's recently, along with Nathan Dorr, set up a charity to help underprivileged people in Ghana in association with the Villa Lions for Ghana. If I got the name wrong, I do apologise. But for that, but then you see John McGinn, you see all the stuff that he does, and you don't hear about charity things or whatnot, though I'm sure he does, and he likes to keep it to himself. But you see the daft stuff that he does on Instagram that brings the players together. Coming dressed as a turkey at Christmas, for God's sake,
Nice.
Telling Sean Dyche he's got a crap coat. Things like that.
I mean, you are a connoisseur of coats, so no doubt you appreciated that.
Yeah, but he's a leader, and you watch him play for Scotland, and he always does very well. Mings always did very well for England as well.
Yeah.
McGinn maybe needs the responsibility to help push him on to the next level as well. I think it would be fair to say that last year wasn't his greatest year for the Villa. He was up and down quite a bit. Probably could have. He was lucky not to see himself on the bench on a few occasions, and if we had a bit more quality, he may have done. Same could be said about Mings, though, at times.
I mean, he was on the bench a couple of times last season.
Well, yeah, and it just goes to show that actually we're trying to push forward and we're trying to be the best Aston Villa that we can. Unfortunately, there's no room for sentiment in football.
No.
And you've got to put who you think is the best man for the job. Now, for me, I potentially wouldn't have chosen either of them.
No, I mean, we'll come on to your pick in a moment, but I just want to give the counterbalance to a couple of points that you raised there. In terms of the captain at youth level, I totally, let's get the scroll out. In terms of the captain at youth level, I totally agree with you. In terms of kids, that they develop at different speeds in terms of, there's on the ball ability, but also kind of in that, kind of confidence level. So, and I'm not being a coach of youth football, so I will throw my uninformed opinion in. A lot of that can perhaps do with a lot of things that aren't strictly related to their ability on the ball. Could be size. Just could be just where they are in terms of school has an impact. I'd say in terms of what's going on there. So quite a lot of things go into it. So you do need somebody who's going to be more vocal, as you said, getting people around the pitch where they need to be. Cajoling and encouraging. So 100% agree with that. What I'd say in terms of top flight football, Premier League level, you're looking at it, we talked about McGinn there, we talked about Mings there in terms of they've got those attributes that you could say that they have. I reckon you should be able to, in a Premier League team, go down the starting 11 and pick, without even really thinking, at least 8 or 9 in that starting 11 who you like. yeah, they got that. They could be captain. Maybe the younger players, just come in and establish themselves at the season beginning. You wouldn't throw them in as captain.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't have thought. But I'd say in terms of, you mentioned Gerrard as captain, the inspirational figure on the field. Yeah, 100%. But was it him as captain, in his role as captain, that was inspiring? And I do think it's a circular thing. Because I'm going to answer my own question before I ask it. Was it his performances that were inspiring his team, or was it the fact he was captain inspiring his players perhaps to go to a high level? Because you could say for Gerrard, it's the fact he was captain was inspiring him to high levels. You don't know. We'd have to ask him next week. Our Steven Gerrard interview. But I think in terms of, I think on the field, the captain at the top flight level isn't the one, or it shouldn't be really. I don't think, if the manager is well established and has set the game plan out correctly and clearly, so the players understand it. That work has already been done, so the captain is more kind of the encouraging one or the cajoling one, depending on what's going on. I think you could get quite a few people to do that, and I think in terms of alluded to off the field, I think that's where the captain is. You have to be more careful in terms of who you pick, because they are the face of the club.
Yeah.
They are the ones doing. I mean, you say most players are involved in charity work, and it does go underplayed, mainly the media, because it doesn't really fit with the all footballers are money grabbing so-and-so narrative that likes to be pushed out.
Yeah.
So a lot of players are very generous with their time, but it's on a bigger focus if you're captain, because, in terms of, it's the things as fans, the charity side is very important, but it's also the sponsors, in terms of they have their, couple of days at the club, given the tour or in a box, and it's like the captain is generally the one who is expected to be there, in terms of the face of the club. It's, in terms of all sorts of stuff that isn't necessarily which isn't football related. That's what the captain's got to do. And in terms of the captain is off the field, not as potentially that role model character, or I say doesn't want to be. In terms of, that's where your captain may have potential issues, because then it kind of can divide, dressing room. I think it's more, you can pick, it has more of an impact if you pick kind of the wrong person than it does like picking the right person, if that makes sense. Because I think, you'd say Mings, in terms of the reasons that Gerrard gave for not renewing, I don't know if renewing is the right word in terms of capacity this year. His response, Mings' response, demonstrated why he was an excellent choice for captain in the first place.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't think it's can be seen as we've picked McGinn, therefore we think Mings is terrible. I don't think that's the case. It's just in terms of there's a lot of other things going on. And you mentioned in terms of, is it going to inspire McGinn, in terms of lifting his performance? Because there's lots of reasons for this, mainly because they play a different position largely. In terms of his performances for Scotland, that horror miss aside, kind of in the playoffs, against Ukraine, shall we say, there is, especially the last couple of seasons, especially last season, there is a difference between what a Scotland fan will say about McGinn as opposed to what a lot of Villa fans will say about McGinn. I mean, if you've listened or watched this show before, I'm in the pro McGinn category. I mean, he's got the best arse in the business. Take that anyway you like. But in terms of, I think in terms of for choice for captain, I think we both agree. If you're just picking a captain in a vacuum, not literally a vacuum because there's not a lot of space in a Dyson anymore, but I think it's a good choice. But I think in terms of, will it have a huge impact in terms of how we perform this season, in terms of, is it going to be the difference between us coming 6th or 16th? I don't. Is my honest view. Okay. I think what it does in terms of, which may lead us on nicely in terms of discussing the more important aspect, those two players positioned starting 11. What it does do, McGinn's captain, he's going to play. I mean, in terms of, I've seen a lot of fans in terms of their starting 11s, if they were picking the team, McGinn's not in it. I mean, in terms of friends of the show, in terms of on our WhatsApp chat, a lot of them don't have McGinn in their starting 11. But I think in terms of he's captain, he'll play.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be a pretty cruel joke if that starting 11 against Bournemouth, Mings is in as captain, or Martinez is in as captain, McGinn's not even in the squad or on the bench unless he's injured.
It'd be even funnier if Martinez wasn't in as well.
Yeah, Robin Olsen captain. You heard it here first. But yeah, I mean, I think in terms of we mentioned kind of the leadership attributes in terms of who you pick as captain. I think there's a more kind of obvious one. You pick a captain who's going to play.
Yes, yeah, you do. I mean, and you're right. You know, you need a captain who, for me, a captain is someone who can either lead by example, one way or another. And in our youth football, we've had the same two captains over the last 4 years. We've added a couple of extra ones since. Very much on the Smith, what his philosophy was of having 4 captains or a squad that different captains suited different games. And we say to our captains, you choose who's going to be captain for the game. And it tends to be the same one or two. I've got one who leads by example with their actions, one who leads by example because of the way that they play and they're inspiring, another one who's a bit of both, and then the goalie as well, because the goalie is so very vocal and is always 100%. I do like my captains to be a little bit deeper on the pitch. I know I've been a captain as a midfielder, and that's more as a defensive midfielder, though I couldn't tackle for toffee. I would have liked to have seen Martinez. However, you back whoever. It's the club, and it's about the club, and that's the main thing. And whoever is the captain, you give them your whole support 100% of the time. It would be funny if he didn't make the starting lineup, but I think that just goes to show really what John McGinn's done over the last year in regards to his dips in form, and that there's people who are very well educated within the game who feel that he's the best person to be captain, and you trust the decisions that they make. But at the same time, there's that room for improvement that there's fans who are saying, well, I wouldn't be in my starting 11.
And hopefully that acts as double motivation for McGinn. I mean, I don't know how much time he spends looking kind of on social media and such things, but a competitive player, seeing that, thinking, I'm not even in the team, I'll show them kind of as it were. You think he's that type of character.
You think so, wouldn't you?
And I think I say in terms of, if you're picking, you mentioned Martinez as captain, if you're having the situation, which we haven't, and I don't think you should, if you're just picking the best player, Martinez will be captain.
Coutinho?
You could throw in Coutinho. I mean, I'd say...
No, you're saying for Martinez, yeah.
So in terms of, I'd say, and I'd say it because I have said it before, and because we are biased, so we have to get some, or a lot of pro Villa in there. I think if you're looking in terms of the best goalies in the Premier League, he's third.
Yeah, he's definitely up there with I can only think of 2 that are better than him, and one of them's been a bit shaky recently. So
yeah, I mean, arguably you say De Gea perhaps, but I was throwing in Edison and Alisson. I think they're top 2, and then Martinez there. So I think in terms of
I thought you meant like Hennessy and McCarthy.
Well, to be fair, I'm looking forward to. To be fair, I know you're looking forward to Sam Johnson being back in the Premier League, and I know you've been an advocate for Villa perhaps on occasion in the past, and I think that is when we had him on loan. If we hadn't had, shall we say, financial problems,
He joined us.
Yeah, we would have signed him, and I think he'd be a very good choice. So maybe if you have been listening to our previous episodes, when we did a World Cup preview a few months ago in terms of who we think is going to be on the plane for the England squad, when we do that again in October, start of November, if Johnson has played a few games for Palace by that point, he could be there. We'll say. But that is a teaser into the future. And speaking of teasers into the future, brings us on quite nicely to the immediate future. If I've got my dates right, Saturday the 6th of August.
Yep.
Bournemouth away. And we'll go straight in because we talked about, well, rather abruptly, I laid it down that McGinn will be playing because he's captain. In terms of who else will be playing in that team, mentioned Tyrone Mings, not captain anymore. Is he playing? Is he on that starting 11 team sheet for Bournemouth? Should he be, in your view?
For me, he should be. And it's a very close call between him and Chambers. Chambers has been fantastic ever since he's joined us. You know, that cream egg that fell out of the sky has turned into one nice tasty bit of chocolate.
Yep.
Let me tell you.
That cream egg tree you got growing in your garden,
Right.
I mean, that is a sight.
A proper sugar rush off that one. But I'll go with Mings, and I've said previously, and I've said some things that were deemed as silly before about Mings, like defensive midfield.
Well,
Stuff.
might be the only way he gets in the team. If Kamara gets injured, maybe.
But also said that whilst I'd never really thought that Mings played badly, made too many mistakes, although he did make some, you know, that having a world-class central defensive midfielder in front of him, or a top-tier central defensive midfielder, and a top-tier left-back to the side of him, and at that time we thought Ezri Konsa was a very good player who just had a bit of dip in form, but another top-tier centre-back next to him and goalkeeper will only elevate him further. Look how well he does for England. I think we see an even better and improved Tyrone Mings. I actually wouldn't be surprised if he was captain again within the next few years, based upon how well he's gonna do. And he's got such a massive point to prove now, whether he thinks he has or not, you know, and whether we think he has or not. I think he's of that mindset of, I'm going to show you that I should be the first name on the team sheet, that you've made a mistake here, and it's going to be me and Diego who are your first choices. You look at him, remember him against Benteke last year when we played Palace, and he absolutely wrestled him off the ball away at Selhurst Park like Benteke was a ragdoll. He ragdolled him, really. And you've got Mings, Carlos, Din and Martinez, and then Matty Cash with Kamara in front of you. That's not a bad defensive six, really, that can allow the rest of them to push forward. So for me, Tyrone Mings, but I think it's going to be a season where Konsa and Chambers also have a lot of opportunities to push those two out of the way. Mings more so than Carlos, just because of how much, because of being a new signing and vice captain as well. But yeah.
And I think also the amount of games that are coming up over the first few months of the season and after the World Cup, just to get them all fit in. I think there is going to be
cup runs as well until we get Man U in the third round.
Yeah, of both the League Cup and the FA Cup.
Yeah.
My thought about Mings playing centre back, and I think what you said at the end there, I think has mirrored into my view in terms of Bournemouth game opening day. Do I think Mings will play? Yes. Or I'll put it another way. I think he should play. I would play him.
Well, he's going to have a point to prove against Bournemouth as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
Coming from there, you know.
So I would play him just because of first game of the season, newly promoted team. They're going to have a point to prove back in the Premier League. Perhaps there's without wishing to give away the contents of our Premier League Predictor episode, which will be coming out later in the week. There's quite a few people thinking Bournemouth aren't going to do very well in the Premier League. We are remaining tight-lipped in terms of how we think Bournemouth will do. But a lot of the pundit kind of season previews I've seen, I've got Bournemouth coming bottom. So I think so they have a point to prove. First game at home. I mean, there's part of me, you know, that thinks it's a bad game for us in terms of last time we played Bournemouth at home on the first game of the season. But I think in terms of that environment, that game, I think Mings is a good choice to play alongside Diego. You saying in terms of, I think there's going to be a rotation in terms of that position besides Diego. I think Diego's first choice. I think he's going to play when he's fit. He will play, I think. And in terms of, especially because of you mentioned the attacking fullbacks, more license to go forward. You want somebody at the back who's just going to mop it all up and no one pass type thing. And that is Diego. I mean, he
good ball player as well.
Yeah, I think he looks like he's a good player.
Yeah,
and I think in terms of if he can adapt to the pace of the Premier League, which I think will take a little bit of time to begin with, but I think we've got a good sign in there.
You know, he showed against Rennes that he's a danger at the other end as well, hasn't he? With his goal. So yeah, I agree with everything you said there. I mean, the other thing to factor in, forgetting the last time we played Bournemouth on the opening day of the season, how that went.
Yep.
Remember the last time we played a newly promoted team on the first day of the season?
Yep.
It was only 12 months ago,
Yep.
and that didn't end very well.
No. In terms of, it's a very Villa thing to do, to have a team who gets relegated do the double over you, which they did. I mean, we started with a reference to Watford. We're ending with a reference to Watford, or near the end. And so in terms of, I'm going to ask you live on air, in terms of, we've touched into the Bournemouth issues. We touched a little bit earlier in terms of that starting formation. There was a feature that we did at that first game last season, the Watford preview that we did.
Okay.
Short-lived, much missed, much loved. Baz on the phone.
Oh,
You know, I mean, that was... Go and check it out. It is there.
Your brother's favourite bit, wasn't it?
Yeah, on the YouTube channel. It is there. And if you're wondering, what is Baz on the phone? It's me on the phone. And we were talking about that. So...
Old-fashioned phone that you were sat on, which was quite weird.
I mean, it was very 1990s, I'd say, in terms of the audio. Vision for us all. So, getting live on air, do we now, in the modern technology that we do have now on our audio and visual providers, steam ahead to do our Bournemouth preview for the result right now? Or do we go old school later in the week and bring back Baz on the phone as a memory to the first game of the season and hope the result is different?
I'm going to do the nation a favour and just tell you right now, in regards to the prediction. No, I enjoyed Baz on the phone. That was an interesting thing. Do you know what? I'm going to put a poll out and see what people want to do for next week. How about that? That's a fair. I'll put Baz on the phone as a poll, and if people want that back for the next game or for later in the week, then fair enough. I'll give you my prediction now, though.
Yep, let's do it.
And it's up to you whether you tease us with yours or not. It's going to be a 2-1 Villa win, and Tyrone Mings is going to get the winner. Or he's going to score against Bournemouth.
There we go.
There you go. 2-1 Villa, Tyrone Mings to score. Put your bets on, probably about 30, 40 to 1, I reckon it'll be.
Yep.
There you go.
I would say, in terms of, I'm going to predict what the fans are going to say. And I'll do my prediction now. In terms of that, maybe Baz on the phone later on in the season. Maybe if we're doing well, we might bring it back for an old school special.
Old school classic.
I'd say, in terms of, because when we last played Bournemouth, we mentioned on the opening day we won and we came bottom. I don't know if I want to predict us to win, just because if we're, I don't think it will come bottom. But funny enough, that is exactly what I said before the game. I remember, like 6 years ago, whatever it was, when we did come bottom. So, but basically, don't listen to anything I say, apart from all of the rest of this podcast, which is fantastic. So, I am.
It's nice.
Yeah, that is a recommendation for the ages right there. I say, in terms of, I don't think Bournemouth will win.
Yeah.
I think in terms of, you don't win games on paper, but regardless of what team we play, I think we're a much better team, and like what we've seen in pre-season, questions aside that we've got, but I still think we shouldn't have too much for them. And I do also know we do have a bit of a theme from last season, whereby based on the predictions we did, we were Champions League with you. I mean, we still came higher than what we did with my predictions. I think I had us 8th, if everything I said would have come true. But there's a discrepancy. I think it was about 35 points difference.
Came third with me, didn't we?
Yeah, came third, 79 points. So I feel like, in terms of, if I predict a Villa win, then that gimmick is gone, isn't it? In terms of, if we're both going hard for the victories. But, new season.
I think it'd be, I don't know, I think it's interesting. I think you could put a bit of a wager on it, potentially. Who gets the closest to what we actually do.
Yeah, but then in terms of, do I go, head-heart situation here, in terms of, I'm torn between 1-1 and 2-1 Villa, is my thought. But if I go 2-1 Villa, I mean, we're literally exactly the same, you know, in terms of, you know, we started the episode, we were doubling up, if you listen to the intro, which of course you did, because it was a fantastic bit of improvised comedy. We're ending the episode doubling up. Let's do it. New season, new start, 2-1 Villa.
Yeah.
I will leave the goal scorer predictions to you in terms of Tyrone Mings, but...
Angel first goal, 2-1.
Vassell Sandwich on the pitch, half time. So, yeah, new season, new start, new optimism. It may all be gone by this time next week when we're doing the review of this game, but I'm going to do it. 2-1 Villa. Let's do it. Yeah. And speaking of doing it, we've just done our pre-season roundup of Villa and our preview of the Bournemouth game, along with our debate about the captain. So that brings us to the end of this episode of the podcast, and thank you very much for listening, watching, however you are viewing or receiving, listening, whichever word you want to put in terms of...
receiving would have been fine until you backtracked.
Yeah, I'd say however these words and pictures are coming to you, we do appreciate all the likes, retweets, subscribes, which you can check us out on our Twitter page at Talk Trinity. We're keeping you up to date with all Villa news right up to the start of the new season and beyond. You can check us out on our YouTube channel, Talk of the Trinity, whereby past episodes are there for your viewing pleasure. If you want to have the notification as to when the episodes are released, then you can join our subscribe list. You can, all the technology is there, so you don't miss a thing. Also on our audio providers, Spotify, Amazon, Google, some other ones.
Deezer, Geezer, Sneezer,
some other
Tweezer.
ones. And, in terms of, you can tell we're excited about the new season. It's going to be a roller coaster of a season. Hopefully the enjoyable type of roller coaster rather than the one that makes you lose your lunch afterwards. We're going to have plenty of guests coming on during the course of the season. Friends of the show, new friends of the show, well-wishers, naysayers, probably. In terms of looking forward to getting the opposition fans' opinions, which we will reach out to them during the course of the season. So before I pass you over to Mr. Trinity for his final thoughts, thank you very much for listening, watching, and we'll be with you again soon.
Yeah, cheers, Tar. Thank you very much for listening, for watching the best double act since Morecambe and Wise, maybe since Frankie and Benny, since the two grumpy old men on the Muppet Show who were sat up in the balcony. Yes, that's where you recognise his voice from. Anyway, we've hit over 60 episodes now with the recording of this one and the Premier League one. So thank you for that. It's probably actually a lot more because I don't number them all, if I'm being completely honest with you.
There's enough.
The subscribe list that he mentioned, get us onto your favourite podcasts on Spotify, on Apple, however you listen to your podcasts. Check us out on FanHub, as mentioned. Make sure you subscribed to YouTube. There's a little button down here somewhere. Press it. You got it. You're on it. And hopefully the other people who are on it are those 11 that start and the 5 substitutes who could potentially come on. It's going to be a jamboree of players at Dean Court next weekend. And we all know Danny Ings is going to get the winner, really. But until next time, cheers, Tar. Thank you very much. I'm Villa till I die. He's Villa till he dies. Up the Villa.